When I was a teen, I think the worst insult that could have been thrown my way was to have been told how much I reminded someone of my dad. At that age, especially as a closeted gay man in a conservative city, I was determined to find my own identity. It would have never admitted any familial resemblance, no matter how much it was true. I wanted to throw off the yoke of expectations that I felt had been foisted upon me. Even if yet I couldn't verbalize or describe what those expectations were, I felt them. And of course, as a teenager, I knew everything, and my parents knew nothing at all. My rebellion was a soft-spoken one, in contrast to that of my middle siblings, whose frequent jousts with my parents over driving privileges and curfews often devolved into shouting matches and tears. Imagine the injustice of having to be home by midnight. For my rebellion, I planned an escape. I wanted to get as far away as I could. I managed to bring my plan to fruition when I was extended the privilege to extend an out-of-state college, a 10-hour drive from our home in Cincinnati. My dad had not been as enthusiastic as I was about my college choice. I'm sure most out of concern for the cost of tuition. But also, I suspect, a healthy dose of skepticism about some place so far away and so out of the norm for my family and our peers. The first time we drove through upstate New York to Ithaca, I can remember how surprised my dad was. As the miles rolled on and we passed the major cities of Ohio, each successive pit stop got smaller and smaller. First Cleveland, then Erie, then Jamestown, New York, and then nothing but the rolling hills of the southern tier for another 4 hours. My dad later confessed that he had expected nothing but industrial zones and petroleum processing plants. I jokingly informed him that, "No, Dad, that's not New York. You're thinking of New Jersey." When we arrived, I wanted to check in and ship my mom and dad off as fast as I could. Graciously, my parents obliged. They helped me unload my crates and trunk into my tiny, dingy dorm room and gave me a hug and drove off. Later that night, my mom called to let me know they'd arrived home safely and to ask how I was doing. Of course I lied. "Everything is great. Everything's wonderful. Everyone's really nice," I managed. I couldn't let them know for even a second that I doubted my decision. I could admit that as a shy, closeted public school kid from Kentucky, I was a fish out of water, surrounded by private school kids from New England and jet-setting New Yorkers. When I inquired on how the trip home was, my mom was much more honest than I was, as is always the case. "Well," she said, "it was a long, quiet drive. We miss you already." Then there was a long pause. "I did a lot of the driving at first," she said. "Your dad cried a little bit when we dropped you off, and he was really sad the rest of the way home." I wasn't prepared to hear this. At 18, I still viewed my parents as mythical. Flawed and flawless all at the same time, eternal figures without vulnerability, both superhero and villain, Wonder Woman and Superman, or Lex Luthor and Catwoman, depending on the day, but never Jonathan and Martha Kent. This was truly the beginning of the evolution of my mom and dad, from the abstract concept of parents to the human beings who raised me. For me, in my particular place and time, the idea of parents was one loaded with the ideas of gender roles, class, race, and moralism. It was hard for me to see past that. For me, a queer kid, to see myself in them was so difficult. After graduating and bouncing around from a couple of jobs in a couple of cities, I found myself with no good career prospects and no place to live. At 25, I picked up the phone and sheepishly asked my parents if I could move back in with them. Until I sorted things out and got back on my feet. Of course, always gracious and caring, they agreed. I lived at home for 2 years while I pursued my master's degree at night, and during the day I worked. I didn't have much time for socializing, and I found myself in that awkward transitional phase of life where making new friends becomes difficult and finding a relationship is even more elusive. During that time, I got to see my parents not as my capital P parents, but two loving, honest, quirky, good-intentioned people who raised me for the first 18 years of my life. As the conceptual artifice began to fall away, I could begin to see and appreciate my parents for who they really were. And so, on this Father's Day, in the midst of a gay pride that's been put on hold by a pandemic, and accentuated by the civil strife to bring long overdue racial justice to our community, I thought we'd take a step back and attempt to deconstruct the institution of Father's Day. But before you tune me out, and before you say to me, "Oh no, something else we've gotten wrong, we can't have anything anymore, Father's Day is for fathers," just hold on, hear me out. On the groundbreaking television show Transparent, the lead character, Mara, announces that she intends to transition from her gender assigned at birth to the one that matches what's in her heart. Her 3 adult children are taken by surprise at first and spend much of the series coming to terms with Mara's gender identity and their relationship to her and to one another. In one particularly moving scene, her children, struggling to make sense of this change that has occurred late in life, come to a difficult realization. Can they still call Dad, Dad? It's an uncomfortable and relatable exchange as they confront seeing their parent for who she really is, not who they saw her to be as a child. After some discussion and learning, they decide that there is no word in the English language to describe their parent, so they create a new word. Mara, once their dad, will now be their mama. It's a touching resolution, and one that reminds us of the flexibility and ingenuity of the human heart, and our ability to love one another if we are willing to see each other as human rather than as the ideals, concepts, and stereotypes that are laden upon us. So this Father's Day, let's send love to our dads, like my dad, who cares for me to this day by gifting me potted plants that I don't have room for, knowing the questions about the bricks on the facade of a house that I like to buy, and clipping out coupons for me that I'll never use, but I tell them that I will. But let's also celebrate my brother and his husband, 2 dads raising a brave, intelligent, adorable little girl every day, while still making a place for the birth mother in their family. Surely we won't limit Father's Day to just biological fathers. What about all those amazing foster dads out there, caring for children in the greatest time of need? And what about grandpas who are raising grandkids along with grandma? And what about moms, single moms, making it work because dad can't or won't be in the picture? Stepping in to do all the things that society tells us that dads do, like fixing the lawnmower or showing us how to throw our first pitch and how to stand up for ourselves. Absolutely. Single moms, happy Father's Day to you too. And what about those of us estranged from our families? Some dads and some families don't get it right. Some of us, especially in the LGBT community, choose or are forced to leave our families to save ourselves. And when we do, we often make our own families, where we find friends and mentors to provide us with the love and guidance that all of us yearn for. Yes, you too. Happy Father's Day to our created families, our families of choice, our father figures and our mentors, our den fathers and coaches and teachers and ministers and camp counselors too. Everybody that's ever held the hand of a frightened child and said, "It's okay." Everyone that's ever given a hug and a shoulder to cry on. Everyone that's offered you tough love by reminding you to fill out that application already, or stand up straight, or shine your shoes before the big day. Happy Father's Day to them too. Soon, we'll realize this circle has gotten awfully big. That's not what Father's Day is, some old crank will yammer while stamping their feet. I say, yes it is. That's exactly what Father's Day is for. When we abandon our preconceptions of what it is to be a father and open ourselves to the love of our fathers have for us, regardless of their shape, size, or color, we realize that love really has no bounds if we don't contain it. So to dads of all kinds today, happy Father's Day. We love you, Dad.